What tariff did Calhoun want to nullify? The tariff of money. That kind of hurt my throat. And tariffs do what to prices? Yeah, tariffs raise all prices, but that actually is the reason he wanted to nullify the tariff. He wanted to nullify the tariff because he wanted to do what? And it would protect slavery by, what was he hoping would happen?
South Carolina was seceded.
No, he didn't want South Carolina to secede. He wanted South Carolina to threaten secession. But then what would happen to the rest of the South? They would join. He wanted to unify all the South behind one issue. Unify them. Unify them and therefore protect the Union. Calhoun did not want secession. Did not want civil war. Nullification and secession meant civil war. Everyone knew it. Everyone knew that's war. And so he's threatening it. And during Indian removal, what were the two court cases that said that we're domestic dependent nations? But why didn't Jackson believe he had to enforce them? Because what? States. So it's this gray area. Now today, there's the way we interpret the Constitution in the 14th Amendment. Yeah, back then, not clear. Doesn't justify it, but there's a lot of gray areas there. So the tariff conflict. Did we get to this?
No.
We're right here.
Oh, did we get to the Jefferson dinner?
Yeah.
Did I tell you about the toast?
Yes.
All right, so 1832, it all came to a head. That is when the war would happen. Remember, the tariff, slavery. And 1832, there was a lower tariff, but not low enough for Calhoun. Calhoun wanted the tariff to be big. He wanted the revolt. It's supposed to be 70 inches by tomorrow. I know I'm making that up, but 70. Actually, 3. 6 in one hand. Okay, so Calhoun still used that slightly lower tariff to convince what state? That's too small for a country and too big for an insane asylum. That was the joke about South Carolina then?
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'll explain why I'll show you exactly why they're crazy a little bit later on, but they'd be the state that would start the Civil War.
Okay.
And so, the South Carolina, but I'll show you exactly what made them crazy a little bit later on. They would issue the Ordinance of Nullification in 33. And 33 had said that South Carolina would not obey the law. And Calhoun assumed that all these southern states would join up, and they even planned a convention, please be the right one, in Nashville, where the southern states would come together and they would kind of unanimously nullify the tariff. The federal government would back down, the South would now be unified and show their strength, and therefore defend slavery. Whose hometown was Nashville?
Andrew Jackson.
That's Jackson's hometown. So it's kind of a slap in his face. Remember, that's where he fought his duel. Well, how do you suppose Jackson reacted? When Jackson heard this, supposedly, he went, by all damnation, I'll hang them all. And knowing Jackson, he probably meant it. But it got through Congress. In fact, it showed what a clever politician Jackson was. He knew he must show that he will not allow nullification. If a state can nullify a law, the whole federal government apparatus will fall apart, and the country's dead. It's gone. He knows it. But he also knows if he pushes too hard, it might lead to secession and civil war. So he does this, 2 things, and it was so clever. First off, he reacted harsh. He pushed through Congress the Force Bill. And the Force Bill said the federal government will enforce laws. Now, the federal government will enforce federal laws, meaning the Army. The Army will enforce it, and the Navy. Now, we had a tiny Army, a tiny Navy. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second. Worcester versus Georgia, and Cherokee versus Georgia, isn't this a state issue? The Constitution says the federal government can collect taxes. So it's federal law, therefore he could do it. So he wasn't, in his mind, being inconsistent, even though it's a little bit of a stretch. But what he did was so clever. He didn't go put troops in really the only harbor, Charleston. He had the Navy. He had a tiny Navy, but enough to stop merchant ships. Stop them 20 miles offshore and collect the tariff off there. So it didn't look like they're invading South Carolina, because that might have pushed states in this Nashville Convention. But instead, he made it very clear, we're going to enforce laws. If anybody commits treason, Jackson will personally lead the army down and hang every traitor. Everybody knew Jackson meant it. So Calhoun, when this first happened, Calhoun thought, we got him. We got him. Jackson, though, began in secret mode to negotiate with Congress a tariff reduction, a compromise tariff that over 10 years will reduce the tariff down. Actually, the 1816 numbers. We just reduced the tariff down. But Calhoun thought, I'm winning. And he had his supporters in the Senate block it. Yeah. Compromise. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I bet you're on the announcements. I bet that's it. So with that, they turned it down. But what are you supposed to happen to the Nashville Convention? Southerners were like, do we really? First off, South Carolina's crazy. Do we want to hitch our wagon to them? And secondly, Jackson means it. Jackson's going to defend this union. And so the Nashville Convention fell apart. And South Carolina's alone and defeated. This is a big deal. Jackson stood them down. He did with a combination of force, and he was going to use strength, but at the same time, he compromised behind the scenes. Very clever. Very, very clever. And with that, Henry Clay would negotiate. Oh. Henry Clay would negotiate another compromise tariff. And he's already known as a great compromiser by then. What bill did he, what compromise did he break apart in two so it could pass? Yeah, Missouri. Clay. This actually didn't reduce as much as Jackson's, but now Calhoun has to have his supporters vote for it. He's totally defeated. This was an humiliating defeat for Calhoun, and I can't even say it now, humiliating defeat for South Carolina. This is a big deal. And what happens to nullification now? It's gone as a weapon. Nullification is basically gone. But if nullification is gone, what's left for the South to threaten if they're worried that someday down the road, slavery might be attacked? Secession. 1850, the next big crisis, they would threaten secession right there. And secession is, everyone knows what they're saying is, we're going to start a civil war or destroy the country. And the thing about this is, Calhoun, who wants to, his vision is saving the country, he's not saving the country for what's happening in 1833. It's not even a big deal about the tariff. He doesn't care too much about the tariff. He doesn't like it, but it's not a big deal. He's thinking what might happen down the road. He sees this as a preventative strike for what might happen. In fact, that would be the exact justification for South Carolina leaving the Union in 1860 after Lincoln's election. It's not for what Lincoln did or what Lincoln believed or what the new Republican Party had ever done. It's for what they might do down the road. Which can't we say they can pretty much do anything down the road because we don't know and don't have a time machine? Yes. Does anyone have a time machine? I just want a couple lottery numbers and then more. So with that, Jackson arguably saved the country. Oh, I think this is really funny. Then South Carolina turned around and they nullified the force bill. Okay, oh yeah, we'll show you. We won't have the force bill. Which Jackson's like, who cares? You lost. So it's absolutely meaningless. And so I know it's time to sing. So I found everyone's favorite song for this era, Jackson and the Nullifiers. Sounds like his band. And so would you want to sing along with me?
I can't read it.
Why, Yankee Land is a steal.
Okay.
So for the test, you're right. Let's do have a 2-day test. Monday, you have to sing this from memory.
I will.
And you notice there's no songs, you have to write a tune. That's easy. That's the easy part, correct?
Yeah.
And so Jackson will be known as forever. Jackson will be known as saving the Union, and he did save the Union. If nullification would have happened, who knows? Yeah.
I know now there's like a law that states can secede from the United States.
There's no law.
Oh,
They just fought a little war, and the secession laws, the traitors' laws. Yeah. But it's not a law. Now, every once in a while, Texas, and that's the other southern states, it's always in the South, we'll talk about nullification. And this is in New Orleans, and this is a statue of Jackson. God, isn't that a beautiful picture?
Yes.
I mean, whoever took that must have had a great eye for art, for color, for framing. I mean, that's just an amazing picture.
it was good. Looks like it's
As it happened, it was me. Yeah, that's one of those, it turned out like, wow, that looks really good. Yes.
If Montana was like a state with no territory, it would tell us a little bit
Or we've become a territory during the war. Oh, Union. Even though Helena was started by some draft dodgers from Georgia, the 4 Georgians. So this is the statue of Jackson in New Orleans, and it's a really cool statue, St. Charles Square, and this was put in because of right after the Battle of New Orleans, which makes sense. There'd be Jackson there. In 1862, during the Civil War, the United States, the Union took New Orleans, and General Benjamin Butler from Massachusetts ordered this put on the statue in New Orleans. The Union must and shall be preserved, as a slap in the face to the secessionists in New Orleans. And so that's still there. Actually, a couple times they thought about carving that away. Last time during the anti-civil rights era in the 1960s, but still there. It's a cool statue. So the third big issue, all to Jackson's point of view about democracy, came up. We have Indian removal, nullification, and the bank war. And the bank war, this is Jackson's fight against the entrenched power. The common man was being attacked by big money, this Eastern establishment, this elite. And it all was represented by the Bank of the United States. That's the Bank of the United States. The first national bank would be in this building. It was built soon after the Capitol was constructed. And now the second bank is there. It's right across the street from now the White House. So if you go there, it's still there. And remember that the columns have neoclassical look, and it's now a private bank. But then it was the national bank. And he saw it as all these economic problems are because of that. And much like nullification, it seemed like a battle between 2 personalities, even though, of course, it's more complicated. And here we have Biddle, the president of the bank, and then he was obviously in his early teens, and Andrew Jackson. I don't think you can make Andrew Jackson look young. I think there's just no way. Andrew Jackson looked old when he was probably 12. And the big thing is this. The national bank controlled the money supply. They issued paper currency backed up by government receipts. Therefore, they could create inflation or deflation. Now, technically, they're supposed to do it to help stabilize the economy. But Jackson and his supporters said, no, we're giving it to a private corporation who picked a president. And couldn't they manipulate the money supply for their own personal gain? They're not elected. The wealth is concentrated there, so we can't kick them out of office. In fact, this bank would be the first corporation in America. And Biddle's bosses are not the or not the voting population like Jackson could claim his work. His bosses were stockholders. And why do people buy stock in a corporation?
Because you get money from the corporation.
So could that be an incentive to manipulate the money supply for their own personal gain?
Yes.
Of course it could be. But Biddle and the Whigs would say, no, this is the best system, not tainted by politics, to help for the stability of the economy. And remember, what party then would be supporting Biddle in this war? The Whigs. So, the election of 1832, oh, by the way, that's Henry Clay sewing Jackson's mouth shut. You see the needle? He's pulling it out. And by the way, that's one big needle. Henry Clay, soon to be known as Mr. Whig, Henry Clay believed that everybody loved the Bank of the United States. And Jackson, who's talking about it, will lose support. He wanted to make it an issue in the 1832 election. So he had a bill through Congress that would recharter the bank 4 years early. He was going to try to make Jackson look stupid, just like the Tariff of Abominations tried to make Adams look stupid. He thought this would shut Jackson up, this bill. If he signs it, he looks like a hypocrite. If he vetoes it, the people will rise up and elect Clay president. That's what he believed. But Jackson vetoed it and did it very vocally. And it was one of the first, in fact, it was the first time that the veto would be used as a political tool. In fact, he used the veto 12 times. Before Jackson, the 6 previous presidents rarely vetoed, and it was unclear if they could do it because they didn't like the policy for politics. Now, Jackson uses it as a tool. He will veto laws he doesn't like. So Congress better change those laws. And that is the way presidents do it to this day. And after this, that's what governors do too. They will threaten a veto. That is their big power to try to change laws. Well, his opponent said he's using this power like a king. The people want a law, and he just vetoes it while trampling on the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. And there is his oar, the veto, he uses for his power. He's a king, he's a tyrant, just like he abuses power with martial decision. So saying, oh, he's a king of the mob, or king numbers. That's why he has his power. Now, Jackson supporters, I'm sorry this picture's a little pixelated. I gotta find another cartoon. This is the golden age of political cartoons. It's never impossible for us to understand. I'll show you a few. But I can't find a big one. So when I try to expand it, it got really pixelated. I blame science. Right? The jury's still out on science. But, well, here's the people's home. It was to be invaded by rats. The rats are, as he saw, this Eastern establishment. But who's protecting it? Jackson, as a cat. Destroying the rats. I love that one, Jackson Cat. And so, is he a tyrant? Abusing his power? Or is he protecting the people? Depends on what? Whatever you believe. If you agree with that veto, then he's defending the people. And every future president's going to do this. And everybody in opposition to someone who vetoes will say they're abusing power to this day. Now, President Obama rarely vetoed. President Bush rarely vetoed. And Congress virtually passes nothing today. So, I mean, I'm not kidding, nothing. So there hasn't been much chance to veto. Now, 1832 election, though, Clay was proven 100% wrong. To say he was destroyed was an understatement. This shocked everybody. Jackson thought he would win. Look at the numbers. But remember that anti-Mason party? Look how many people voted for the anti-Mason party. Shows you how susceptible Americans were and still are to conspiracy theories. And what got actually, he was just an ally of Calhoun, South Carolina. That was their thumbing their nose at everybody because of the tariff issue coming up.
So they basically didn't want their electoral votes states.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who was the South
I can't remember, God, like that, right now I can't remember his name, but he was a nullifier. Floyd was a nullifier. Can't remember his first name.
The only people that,
But-
people who voted for South Carolina.
And just their electors. The people didn't choose electors in South Carolina until after the Civil War. But Jackson sees this as, okay, they voted for me, let's destroy the bank. The people want the bank destroyed. In reality, most people just kind of liked Jackson, and liked what they thought he stood for, and felt he was more like them. And as it turned out, that's the terrible truth and problem with our style of democracy. A significant number of people don't vote based on issues. They don't vote based upon resume or qualifications or even what will help them. They vote on if they like the person, if they think it represents their kind of their class or their race or their ethnic group or the kind of lifestyle they live. That's kind of like little identifiers instead of what they stand for. In fact, I just read a poll from the 2016 election, and most voters did not know the difference between liberal and conservative economics, and did not know which candidate stood for which. So they voted based upon cultural identifiers. The poll had a number of different figures, so all go over 50%, but the economic one, just knowing what the difference between liberal and conservative was over 60%. Had no idea. They had their own cultural identifier, what each of them were. That's disturbing, I would argue. And things haven't changed. That's the point. So, Jackson, let's get rid of the bank. And so, he started pulling government receipts out of the banks and putting them in banks that were in states. They started calling these banks that he put the money in pet banks. Like they're the pets of Jackson. He put money into their allies' banks. Now, this is a pro-Jackson cartoon, and it's awesome. I just love this cartoon. So here's Jackson showing that the money will not go into that national bank. And you see what's coming out of that proclamation? See the lightning bolts? And what's this? Remember that picture of the bank I showed you? There it is being destroyed. And the people cheer Jackson on. Who's that? Biddle. The head of the bank running away. And you notice the devil is very well dressed. Don't trust people who are well dressed. Well, this is going to trigger massive risk or massive loaning of money. All these banks just popped up, able to get quick loans. And in fact, banks just appeared overnight. Basements of stores, and there were no rules. They called them wildcat banks. And these banks in various states just started loaning money like mad. Because what happened is, when government receipts, and that's tax revenues and sale of public land, when they went to the banks, all of a sudden they had all this money. And what did they do with the money? They started making loans like mad. And that's going to trigger more loans, and trigger more loans, and trigger more loans. It became crazy. Now, why were people borrowing money? What do you call it when somebody buys something low and tries to sell for a profit? Someone said speculation. So I didn't put this on here. Everybody write this. This is part of will create a speculative bubble where people started believing that basically two things were going to rise in value, and they all started buying it. The two things were the new wonder technology of the era, railroads. Everyone just thought, oh, you invest in a railroad, you're just going to get rich. So people started investing like mad and started producing more railroads than actually they had the money for. In fact, people were starting to invest in companies that didn't even exist. I'd like to say that doesn't happen today, but that happens all the time. In fact, someday I'll tell you about naked short selling, and it'll blow your mind out. But you not believe how complex the stock market is. But the big one, this happens almost every time. It's Real estate. Real estate. There was a real estate boom. Gold's coming about a decade. That's about 12 years, 13 years. Well, think about railroads need land, but there's also westward expansion. All this land opened up because they forced the American Indians who lived here out, and land values skyrocketed. But think about, let's just say with real estate, because that's the easiest one to look at. Once you have people think, boy, tomorrow real estate's going to be so high, so I'm going to buy it today. And you have all these people agreeing, so they start trying to buy land. Demand for land goes up. What happens to the price if demand goes up? It goes down. Think about demand. If they all want it, they'll bid against each other. Price goes up. And pretty soon price just keeps growing bigger and bigger. And that's where you get the term bubble. Think about a bubble. You know, a bubble gets bigger and bigger. That's the price. But what's holding the bubble up?
Thanks.
Just a bubble. Nothing. That means the price, if they're actually, people are paying more than what it's actually worth, more than its real value. They keep driving the price up higher and higher and higher. And the problem with a bubble like that, what happens eventually? It pops. And what happens to the price of land if it pops? And if people thought that they're buying land worth this much, and it goes down to here, oh, let's get back to this. People are borrowing money from banks. They can't pay back their loans. And what happens to the banks? But it's worse than that. Because if something, you understand, let me see this way. Good?
Oh, that's a.
Right here. Okay. So just imagine who wants to borrow money from me?
I'll borrow it from you.
I do.
All right, you're borrowing money. How much do you want to borrow? $1 million? So you borrow money and you put down an IOU, right? $1 million. I give you $1 million, you're buying land, right? Here's an IOU, correct? How much is this worth? Plus interest. Because that's how banks make money. Banks don't make money by holding money in their safe. They make money by loaning money at interest. But it's more than that. Now I have a piece of paper saying you're going to pay me back $1 million plus interest. How much is that worth, that piece of paper? Over $1 million, isn't it? Because you're going to pay me back, or you promised you signed it. Correct? So what can I do with this piece of paper? I can sell it to people and give me $1 million. I can sell part of it to people. I can use this as collateral for other loans. I can break out little pieces and sell people little bits of it. I can use this as a check on my land. Here, get your land. Happy? And by the way, when there's a bubble going on, everybody thinks we're all going to get rich. So I trust you to pay it back. You trust me, right? You better trust me. What happens if she doesn't pay it back? I didn't know you were a deadbeat. I trusted you. No, I don't get my money. But what about all the people I sold this to? And then they sold theirs to. What happened to them?
Everything crashes.
It crashes everywhere. Just that piece of paper is money. It's wealth. It's an asset. And that's what banks do. When times are good, won't that kind of cycle money around? But all it takes is one person. No. Once people can't pay it back and that bubble crashes, it can bring down everything. That happened in your lifetime.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. There was the biggest real estate boom in American history, 2004, 2005, 2006. And when it crashed at the end of 2007, then led to a financial panic in 2008. It led to the worst economic depression since the Great Depression. A disaster of unmitigated proportions.
Great Depression was so great.
It was so great. In fact, they didn't want to call it another depression, so they called it the Great Recession. And it would not end until 2014. Wow. It was that bad. And by the way, it made it pretty tough we had an election when that happened. So the incoming president had to deal with the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression. President Obama. Yeah. Stop the free fall. No doubt. But here. And so Biddle is furious. So think about what's happening. It isn't because of Jackson. But Jackson is, I'm going to take money out of the bank, put some of the revenues here, but the speculative boom happened. And no one's really, there's no rules, there's no real controls. And what we have is Biddle and response. And Biddle is furious. And what Biddle does, oh, that's one of the pieces of currency for the bank. That's what they look like back then. That's what currency looked like. During the Civil War, they would make it green. That's the term greenbacks, and that's our money today is green. When they borrowed money, printed money to pay for the war. Biddle thinks, okay, if you want to destroy the bank, I'm going to show the country and also punish Jackson and those voters who voted for him. He's going to take money out of circulation. So they quit printing money and quit loaning money. Now think about it for a second. There's money in circulation, all of a sudden money starts being pulled back, and it's harder to get money. If it's harder to get money, that means it's harder to spend money. What would that create in the long run? What do we call it if it's getting harder to spend money? If it's hard to spend money, eventually prices will do what? It's coming to inflation. Ironically, the value of money goes up, but that's not good for the economy. His whole point was, I'll create deflation, and then you have to admit, you need the bank, right? Now, wait a second. Biddle is using deflation. He's going to try to destroy the country's economy for his own personal gain. That reminds me of something. Who said the same thing? Who said that would happen? Jackson said it. It happened. That proved what Jackson said. He's going to destroy the economy for personal gain. Proved it. Now, it will eventually lead to a financial panic. And this financial panic is the panic of 1837. Now, I'm not exactly sure, because this cartoon is really hard to follow, but as I understand it, this is the bank, or the country, and it's puking up money because of Biddle. I believe that's William Henry Harrison, that's Webster. They always drew Webster with kind of a hawk nose, and Clay, and there's Jackson laughing at them for making these terrible mistakes. Rarely do you see a political cartoon with someone throwing up coins. But I knew you'd be comforted after lunch seeing that. Yes. I love these cartoons. Well, what? Yes?
There's a dude like sitting down.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's supposed to be someone like crying about what's happening. I think it is a dude, too. Right, where it's chaps and a cowboy hat. That's a dude. So, what we're coming to is Jacksonian economics. Why Jackson did it? Oh yeah, I'll explain this cartoon in a sec, but it's the greatest cartoon ever. And there's some good ones. This is the best. Now, Jacksonian economics, and his whole essence is this. To him, economics, how people make a living, that is democracy. And if we allow concentrated wealth, they will rig the system. They will rig laws in the government to help them. So only through democracy can we have a system that will protect small farmers, wage workers, etc. This will become the basis of liberal economics. So it is clearly a different idea than laissez-faire economics or Hamiltonian. This is the idea of more broad-based economic growth instead of helping the very wealthy with the idea that the wealthy will help the economy, which is conservative economics. Now, it's more of a visceral feeling. It's not really policy. You won't see this begin to be enunciated to like the populist era, the turn of the century, then Franklin Roosevelt. But the big things, first off, it feared capitalism. They feared concentrated wealth. It's not that they were opposed to capitalism per se, but capitalism does concentrate wealth because bigger companies are more efficient, can cut costs, and therefore bigger always has a competitive advantage. What is that called again? Economies of scale. And that is the iron rule of life, people. Bigger have a competitive advantage. I mean, you will see it right now. Families with more wealth, their children have a competitive advantage. Not because they're smarter, not because they're better, but all we gotta say is look at the cost of college. It's a competitive advantage. It does not at all make them smarter or better than anyone else. In fact, well, we'll get to that argument a little later on, but it doesn't. But we're going to this. Jumped into social Darwinism. We're not doing that. But economics are political, is the point. This is a political issue. And so that means that government is going to have to take an active role in how people make a living. And that was the essence of this. Because if we don't, or act like we don't, we're just helping the big. Which you can imagine, that's what the Whigs are going to try to do. Act like economics are not political, like it's natural, like the rain falls or gravity. And they're very fearful of speculation. As they saw, speculation was a way for a few people to get rich, and then crush everybody else with debt, or create bank panic. Now, I should add right now, what is a bank panic? Well, first off, you're on the right track. You know that piece of paper, what I told you about the debt? Well, first off, if I thought that was worth $1 million, and then tomorrow I found out that it's worth $3, that's panic. But the actual bank panic is this. So let's say we go back and you didn't pay me back. So then my bank is about ready to go under. Let's say the rest of you put your deposits because you trusted me into my bank. And I've loaned them all out, right? And that's what banks do. They don't keep the money on hand. They loan everything out. Because they don't believe everyone's going to come at once. But if you heard that the bank you have your savings account in might go under, what are you going to do the next morning? So won't you all come at once? What? Yeah. And you're not nice. You're not waiting in line like, what are you doing? You're clawing at the door. It's panic. And what am I going to do? Actually, what a lot happened. Yeah, we lock the door. I get whatever's left in the safe, put my pockets, hit the road. Suckers. Actually, that happened all the time. And what happened to your savings?
It was stolen.
Never existed. You lost everything. And what makes it so scary is, let's say there's another bank down the road. So bank B. Now I'm bank B. I own both. I'm very clever. I didn't make risky loans. My bank is healthy. But if you had your savings in this bank and you saw the bank down the road have a panic, what are you going to do? What are your savings? So even healthy banks can go under.
Why? Why would you saw an unhealthy bank go under? Why would you take your savings out of the healthy bank?
Because everyone believed that bank was healthy.
And so you panic and you're like, oh God, now my bank's gonna die.
And then let's say somehow my bank survives. I survive the panic. You think I'm going to loan to anybody?
Never.
I'm going to sit on my mind. It's called a credit freeze. No. You better prove you can pay it back. When times are good, we're loaning money like mad. We're all going to get rich. When times are bad, I don't trust anybody. Now you would think then the next time there's kind of a bubble and people start going nuts, they say, wait a sec, this has happened before.
No.
Do they?
No.
Never.
No one wants that mystery.
Everybody believes it'll happen, or it's new. In 2004, they were saying housing prices will go up forever. Don't worry about it. Buy a new home, take out second, third, fourth mortgages, everything's going to be fine. Happens every time. Then it collapses. Except for this time. So, what he wanted was, Jackson thought, we got to stop all this speculation. So we're going to put the money, hard money means specie, only coin, gold and silver coin. If we only have that, that will limit debt. Now that is actually not a very good economic idea. That's more of a visceral reaction. But what he's actually talking about is credit controls. And what that means is make it harder for banks to make risky loans. Make it harder for banks to make risky moves and therefore keep speculation down to avoid bubbles. Now, we didn't have anything like this. And from 1837 all the way to 1929, there's going to be a boom, big bubble, bust, boom, bust. And every bust seemed to be worse than the previous one. During the New Deal, President Roosevelt, they passed a series of laws, most importantly the Glass-Steagall Act, which put these controls on banks. And what happened?
Great Depression.
No, that was before the Great, or I mean during the Great Depression. When's the next financial panic? There wouldn't be another financial panic while those controls were in place. there wouldn't be another huge recession at all. Did not happen. In the late 90s and early 2000s, they got rid of all of them. How long did it take? Just a few years.
So there's gonna be another.
Oh, of course. We're riding the wave.
Why don't
Yes.
we just keep?
Because people can make a lot of money. Greed. So, he also feared the wages. Now, by the way, greed is not necessarily bad, but greed makes you think totally unreasonable. You know, you don't care about anything, you want to make money. And as he saw, remember, profits go to those on top, so he's very pro-labor. And labor unions. And so that's his basic idea. But here's what it comes right down. Oh, almost forgot. And then we got to have some kind of government regulation to keep companies getting too big. And so, but they didn't know how to do it then. It was more talk. And to his point of view, if we could just stop the bank, we wouldn't have that. And that's why, remember antitrust, I told you about those anti-monopoly laws? It's shaky. That's where we get the bus. The anger over the bus. The bank represented everything. In Jackson, we just get rid of the bank. Everything will be fine. So, oh, isn't this cartoon great? So here's Jackson fighting Biddle. That's Clay and Webster cheering on Biddle. She represents what kind of people? Well, very wealthy, good diet. They would show them then as being, heavy because they can eat so much more than poor people. And port was a kind of a sweet wine that was kind of the drink of the very wealthy. And so here's Jackson. There's Martin Van Buren behind it. And here's a good frontiersman, a common man, drinking what everybody should drink, just good old-fashioned whiskey. And we know he's a common man because he's wearing a cat on his head. And as we all know, true lovers of democracy and the common man wear cats on their head. I have no idea why there's a cat on his head.
Who's standing behind him?
What did Linda work? Or there's Van Buren?
It's so hard. It's sorry. Huh?
Yeah, the cat is Andrew Jackson too. 'Cause that's-
Yes. Oh my.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're telling me is cats represent good
Yeah.
or bad, depending on your point of view, right?
Or they represent like, because he was. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking about.
They're like
represent thoughts. Right?
Yeah, there represents thoughts about Jackson.
See the cat here.
It's all a matter of simple physics, isn't it?
I'm telling them.
You ruined it.
Jackson would respond to this speculation with last thing for today, last couple things, the species circles. Let's get it done really quick. And then, I love the cat on that. Let's have a dress as have a cat on your head, Dave.
Woo.
Not a fake one, a real one.
Okay.
Yeah, I might.
Just
You really won't.
now, what Jackson thought is he would slow the speculation down by saying, let's only buy with specie, which is gold and silver coin. Problem is, there's not a lot of gold and silver coin in circulation. So once federal land, well, what happens to the price if there's not very much gold? So people can't pay. What does the price do? Collapse. And therefore, what happened to the land bubble? Pop. And people who thought they had money didn't have it. And that would lead to, wow, that was cool. I don't even know how I did that. The bubble would burst and depression. And what we're going to have, the Panic of 1837. The Panic of 1837. And this would last a decade. A depression that would go on 10 years. Heck, the one in 1873, it's argued it lasted for the rest of the century. That's how bad these are. It's really hard to come out of a financial panic if banks don't trust anybody anymore. Because of one person wouldn't pay back their loan. Have a good day, everybody.
What if Tyler,
You know, when Obama was the president, they did a little bit of it, but conservative economics dominates, so no. And President Trump is trying everything he can to get rid of all of them.
Because it helps out.
At least he thinks it. Yeah.
Because
Okay.
Yeah, but he's yeah. That,
so he's no longer.
but that's not really.
Yeah, it's kids all.
So
Huh?
it'll be about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, his kids are running it. He has no connection with it. All right, everybody.
I have no connection.
Hey, we have a test.
We have a test. We said it was.
Yay, Morgan's here for the test.
You know what? Life's.
Maybe I'll let you take it if you bet the Royals are better than the Twins. Daisy, you'll take that. I was gonna see if you were committed. You are. You're good people. I showed everyone my favorite cartoon yesterday.
You did? Oh, yeah, I love that. You should show the kids that terrible book I found at the library last year. The kids. What was it?
Show the kids. What book?
Remember I emailed you? It was like, it was like the little black Sambo book.
Black Sambo. When I was a kid, there was a restaurant called Sambo.
No.
Yeah, all over Sam, and it's.
Didn't you tell us that though?
I thought I did tell you that. Maybe I did. Yeah.
Told our class, like,
Well, it was one of those. Yeah, you know, I sometimes forget to tell stories in other classes. Yeah, there was Sam.
ridiculous.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Racial slur. No, but the illustrations
Did a
are really bad.
restaurant named Sam.
Yeah, they sample, and it's a pure.
It's a pure.
Yeah, it's
Was it meant to, like, were they doing it?
you know, it just kind of showed the kind of innate racism that was in there. Where it isn't like they're purposely trying to.
So, yeah.
That internal.
Yeah, it was more like it was kind of it was funny. You know, it was a joke. Yeah, I can remember it, and I ate the samples.
Like, it's really
Okay.
so already.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure he said we need to know what words are.
Yeah.
So, like, tomorrow one, the war ones are now. I understand
We're driving to Vegas, people. You need a sheet of paper. Chop, chop. Chop, chop, people. We're burning daylight. It's supposed to snow again. Any questions? Any questions? Good. What? Who was the The Ballad of Green Beret? Oh, it's not a half sheet of paper. It's a full sheet. We got four of these to do. Oh.
Those are
Zero, so basically we need number of This is free zero. Zero is just a placeholder.
yes. I told you, Pete.
Yes.
I do not make cartoons. Yes. Like that.
Any last minute questions? Okay, no. Last minute questions.
Yeah, we're.
Looking for you. Anything else?
Oh, well, we have to make the others.
I think so.
Why do we vote on everyone?
No. Begin. I want everyone to verbatim give me each presentation. Is that easier than trying to remember just particular parts? Yes.
Are we choosing our conspiracies?
Probably not. We'll see what people get done.
long.
You can write, there's matching. You can write on this. But then sure these on a separate sheet. And there are 5 choices, pick 3 of them. 3 to 4 sentences, explain what it is, give me an example. Shall we begin? Yeah, there are some people gone. Huh?
I love that last video. I'm pretty sure he's a Russian spy though, so I wouldn't trust Vaughn. I think doesn't sound very. Oh my god.
That's, I don't even know what that means. There we go. Put your name on top. Mothman's here.
Dude, I saw a couple people in the hallway.
I saw. Did you?
I'm not even kidding. I'm driving outside Bird's Eye, he's coming from the farm. I'm not kidding. I saw a bird. That's not one. I saw a bird. On Bird's Eye. It's no bird on Bird's Eye.
There's 1 or 2 questions from every presentation.